a couple things here for this here. We're going to talk a little bit about multicellular organisms first. All right. Um, so we're going to have to copy a few things here, and that's fine. But we're going to talk a little bit about multicellular organisms. Then we're going to talk about specifically plants. Okay. And I know you've talked about plants before. Hopefully, we'll have a little more detail for you this year as to what plants look like and structures that are specialized in functions. And that's really what we're going to talk about with multicellular organisms. So we've already discussed that size of a cell is limited. We can't have super big cells because materials would never get to the proper place and time for them to survive. Okay, so we want to have cells, of course, again, that have large surface areas, small volumes, right? Multicellular organisms are made up of many cells, but the cells are not all alike. So a lot of times if we have, like, for example, liver cells don't look like skin cells, and skin cells don't look like nerve cells, and brain cells are different again, and things like that, all right? It is essential that some specialization occurs to deal with different functions, okay? Because, again, we have this complex system here, multicellular, so we have to have specialized functions for each part, okay? Good? Are we done there or not? Yeah. Okay. Next. Oh. Okay. We're going to look at plants here in a bit, so we'll come back to that. What are some advantages of multicellular organisms? I'll let you copy here, and then we'll talk about those, and then we'll talk about some disadvantages as well. So advantages of multicellular organisms, obviously, as you wrote down here, but division of labor, specialized cells perform one particular function effectively and efficiently, so they are designed for that specific function. The size can be smaller. Okay, we can allow transport systems allow efficient exchange of materials, whether that's taking in minerals or energy or food or whatever, and getting rid of waste. It's a lot more efficient. Okay, size becomes smaller. Interdependence of cells, so they don't depend on one cell. If we just had a single-celled organism, if that one cell dies, that organism dies. Whereas we are multicellular, so if one cell dies, we don't even recognize that, right? Like a skin cell flakes off, oh well, I'll get another one, right? No biggie. But it does not kill the entire organism. What are some disadvantages of multicellular organisms? Well, definitely, probably the biggest one is they are pretty complex, okay? They become very complex, and you still have, well, they're very complex, okay? They're not simple single-celled organisms kind of thing. We have many different systems that are trying to work together. Okay, so even though maybe one cell dying doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to die. A specific system like in a tissue or something like that, if one of those things, if there's something wrong with that, then that could be a problem for us. It's not going to function the way we want it to. And also, another one is it takes a lot of energy. Okay. Those are probably two of the biggest advantages. They become very complex. And it takes a lot of energy to run a multicellular organism. Okay. And in some cases, lots of energy, lots of intake of food, Still sometimes doesn't run properly. Okay. Huh? We're going to talk a little bit about, and again, just a little bit about this, just so you kind of get a little introduction to this, but cells are the most basic unit of organization, so individual cells. Cells that are similar to each other, for example, in us, if we're talking about the liver or skin cells, okay? Cells that are similar to each other are often clustered together to form tissues. Multiple tissues can be arranged to form organs. We'll get to some examples here once we get to the leaves and stuff like that, but Multiple tissues can be arranged to form organs, and organs and tissues that perform a shared complex function are called a system. The example that you probably need to know of this, okay, and our number one example, and we're going to talk about this quite a bit coming up here, is the vascular system of plants. Okay, vascular system of plants, which carries water and nutrients to all the other plants' tissues. Okay, tissues being, for example, I guess we could talk about now, but tissues in a plant would be things like leaves, for example, perhaps the stem. Okay, are some examples there. But again, the vascular system of plants is what carries water and nutrients to all the other parts of the plants. We're going to talk about the vascular system, and you've probably heard some terms from that before, more than likely. Okay, all right. Now, specialized cell. Actually, I think we're going to draw this, so we're going to take a little time here. Go ahead and draw this, and this says here. Sorry, I'm going to try and move this over if I can. Yeah, there we go. Okay, and I'll give you a second here. We're going to draw this somewhere, find some space somewhere. You got a whole backside too, don't forget, but we're going to get into the second half of this basically, and we're going to talk a little bit about parts of the leaf. We're going to have to know this. Again, we're going to have more diagrams with this, and also you have to know their functions as well, and where these are located on a leaf. Okay, so the first one we're going to talk about is what we call the upper epidermis. And the epidermis is a protective layer that is one cell thick, and it covers a plant's leaf. It's similar to skin. It covers the upper and lower surfaces of the leaf. The cuticle is a waxy substance that coats the cell to prevent evaporation of water, and the main function is protection, so they do not have chloroplasts and are most likely transparent. And of course, the answer to why is so that they can complete photosynthesis. That's why they're transparent. Okay. It's going to help filter out some of the sun's rays. In that case, there we go. All right. There we go. Okay. Anyway, like I said, cuticle, upper epidermis, lower epidermis there, but only the cuticle on top part. Okay. Next, I guess I have to go to a different. Next one we're going to talk about is B here, which is the palisade tissue cells. These cells are packed with chloroplasts, so it is here where most of the leaf's photosynthesis occurs. These cells are packed closely together to gather the most sunlight, of course. Okay, so they're packed very closely together. And basically, a palisade is kind of, the name comes from a fence, basically, with basically stakes in it. That's what this looks like. So if you look at your diagram, you're going to see where B is there, and you're going to see these long kind of like fence posts, it almost looks like. And that's where the most of the photosynthesis is going to take place. That's where all the chloroplasts are. Okay. Again, they're specialized, right? So again, when we talk about specialization, okay, these palisade tissue cells are going to have lots of chloroplasts, right? The cell before this one, which was the upper epidermis, those cells don't have a lot of chloroplasts, all right? So the cells are specialized for functions. We have to understand that even in a plant, for example, even in the leaf, different kinds of cells have different jobs. So of course, in this case here, they're going to be packed with chloroplasts because we want to have the most photosynthesis take place here, right? So that's what's going to take place in the palisade tissue cells. Is that good? We move on to the next part here. Okay. So again, that would be right here. Okay. That would be your palisade tissue cells there, B. So you can go ahead and label that on your diagram there. Okay. Okay. So we have that so far. Okay. Good. That's what a microscope slide would look like of this. Okay. Again, you'd have basically right in this section here, you can see all these kind of fence posts kind of deal, that would be your palisade tissue cells. Okay, that's what they would look like. All right. Next one we're going to talk about is the spongy tissue cells. The spongy tissue cells also contain chloroplasts, so they also have some chloroplasts. Any sunlight that makes its way through to the next layer basically will also carry out some photosynthesis. They are round and loosely packed, and they allow the cells to exchange gases and water with the environment. Okay. Why are they loosely packed? Yeah.
It says so that they can exchange gases, right?
Yeah, but and
so it has space so that all the carbon dioxide and oxygen can exchange.
yes, and what does that have to do with? Yeah, absolutely. What happens when they're loosely packed? Yeah.
They can move around. Like the cells?
Possibly, yeah.
Maybe when they're loosely packed, it makes it easier for water to diffuse through the cell.
Which has to do with
Surface area
to volume, yes. So surface area to volume ratio is better when it's loosely packed, right? We have a bigger surface area for more gases to get in and out of these cells. Okay. So being loosely packed helps with that, bigger surface area. Okay. And of course, what type of gases are we talking about? We're talking about what? CO2 and mostly O2, yes. Maybe even in some cases, maybe a little bit of water gas as well, H2O. Okay. So carbon dioxide, water, and oxygen are probably their main ones there. Okay. Carbon dioxide, oxygen, of course, are probably mostly what we're talking about here, but again, could be a little bit of water gas in there as well. Okay. So CO2, H2O would be gases that are exchanged there. CO2, H2O, and O2. Okay. All right. And they are, of course, right there, labeled here. So you can see they're kind of packed in here. Okay, again, they're loosely packed. So you can label that on your diagram. Okay, good. Next, what's next? So there's another example of what the slide kind of looks like. Okay, we have the upper epidermis here. We have this palisade lines, right? And then we in this part here, it's kind of hard to see now, but this is the spongy area here. And then of course we have some lower epidermis here. Okay. Stomata and guard cells. And you're going to probably have a little bit to copy there. I'm going to actually, oops. No, let's not do that. I'm trying to do this here. There we go. So stomata and guard cells, small openings in the epidermal layer are called stomata. Singular would be stoma, allow gases in and out of the cell. Carbon dioxide comes into the leaf, and oxygen and water are released through the opening. For what process? Of course, for photosynthesis, yes. Photosynthesis would be that there. Most stomata are on the underside of the leaf. Each stoma is flanked by 2 guard cells that regulate the stoma's size. They can open and close. Why do they need to open and close? Yeah.
To like let in the right amount of like gases or water.
Right. To regulate basically that how much water is taken in, how much carbon dioxide is taken in, how much is released, how much CO2 is taken in, how much oxygen is released, et cetera, et cetera. It basically regulates how much breathing that cell has to, or that leaf has to do. Okay. Good. Okay. What else? Does it say something? I thought it said something about where else did I see that here? Most stomata are on the underside of the leaf. So again, we're not going to have these on the top of the leaf because we have that waxy cuticle. That waxy cuticle is basically going to prevent this from happening on the top side. So most of the gas exchange happens on the underside of the leaf. Okay, and that's kind of important to know, I guess. All right. So with this here, okay, we have these stomata here. Okay. Now this is where it gets a little confusing as far as what this looks like here. The guard cells is probably not the best place to have that labeled there, but these are the openings that we talk about here. Okay. So this right here, this circle and this circle here, and this circle here and this circle here. Those are the stomata there. Okay, so you might want to kind of fix that on your diagram a little bit. And I think the issue is this guard cell is actually this entire thing here. Okay, so it is the other outside portion of this. The guard cell would be right here for that. Okay, does that make sense? So the guard cell kind of surrounds that opening there. Okay. These are kind of intermingled with the lower epidermal cells there, kind of thing. So you're going to see, obviously, you got some lower epidermis stuff, but you also will have these in there as well. Okay, so these are kind of part of that lower layer as well. Okay, and that's where the exchange of gases is going to happen. So again, this, for example, right here, that would be the stomata there. Okay, and then around that is the guard cells. The guard cells have this ability to basically expand and contract, and they're kind of very specialized again. Even those ones aren't like normal cells, and we're going to talk about that in coming up here, probably, I guess for us, probably Monday-ish, but they have a special shape to them that allows them to have that opening and that closing. Yeah?
So like some cells are like blot cells, leaves.
Okay, and then the last thing we're going to talk about here is well, maybe nothing. I don't know. We'll see. How do I get to that now? Let's see. Oh, there we go. Yeah, there we go. We're going to talk about the vascular tissue cells. We're going to talk a little bit about the xylem and the phloem, which you probably have maybe heard of before, probably. Yes? Okay. So vascular tissue cells form a series of tubes that transport fluids throughout the plant. And yeah, I'll let you copy. Again, so we're going to talk a little bit about vascular tissues, and we're going to focus, we're actually going to go back to this and spend a little bit more time on the vascular system here. That'll be, like I said, probably Monday-ish or so. Vascular tissue cells form a series of tubes that transport fluids throughout the plant. In leaves, these are visible as leaf veins called vascular bundles, and they are made up of 2 types of vascular tissue, which we know as the xylem and the phloem. So if you ever look underneath the leaf, you can see the veins kind of thing underneath the leaf, and that's part of this vascular tissue part. Xylem carries water and minerals from the roots to the leaves, and we're going to talk about how that happens. Okay? And then, of course, photosynthesis takes place in the leaf, and then it transports the sugars to the rest of the parts of the plant that it needs to. Okay, could be the stem, so it grows taller. It could be for producing, in some cases, producing apples. using sugars to produce apples or oranges or whatever, peaches. Oh, peaches are good. Phloem carries sugars produced by leaves to various parts of the plant that need it. Okay, and of course those sugars would be used in the process, probably in the mitochondria in some case, for fuel for the cells, for them to carry out their functions, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, and those would be labeled there, so you guys can go ahead that. Now you might say, well, which one's the xylem and which one's the phloem kind of thing? It doesn't honestly really matter. That's not the point of this. But you would see some type of, think of about a vein in the plant kind of thing. That would be what we're talking about there. So somewhere in that kind of circular pattern there, in that vein, would be the xylem and the phloem. Okay? So you can label those. And then I think we're done for today. You got some questions to worry about at the bottom there. You guys can do that for, well, actually, you're probably going to have a little bit of time tomorrow, perhaps, as well. So if you don't get those done tonight, you could probably do that for tomorrow, because you got a quiz tomorrow. We'll talk about that real quick here. But, okay. Is that good? Everyone got that? Yes, no? Okay. Again, you would see things like this, okay? The xylem and the phloem here kind of thing, okay? Vascular bundles. Might look a little something like this if you looked at a cross section. If you look at the bottom of a leaf, we'd be looking at this kind of vein there, one of those veins there, okay? All right, yeah. So let's talk a little bit about